There's lots of different branches, and you kind of have to pick what you want to follow. There's calculus, there's stats, there's like number sense, things like that. There's foundational, so looking at proofs, things like that. So stats is one that's really widespread. And almost every major, if you go to college and if you get a 4-year degree, almost every major will require you to have at least one class of stats. Because almost every job, you're going to be looking at stats, and it's important that you understand what they mean. Anthony, phone away. No, it's out. Come on, bro.
I don't even care what I have to do a test.
You're going to be saying that on the next test when we don't have the notes. All right, so first off, we're going to talk about what data and statistics are, because that's what we're going to be doing the rest of the year. So data, sometimes people say data. I kind of go between the two. Mostly I say data, but I don't know. Sometimes I say like the data. It's very confusing. All right, and data is facts collected together to make conclusions. So if you hear somebody say data and you hear somebody else say data, it's not anything different. Okay, it's just two different ways to say it. It's like tomato, tomato. They both are talking about a tomato. Just say it different. So data, data. So the data on the board was our traveling distance, or traveling time in New York. But then what we tried to come up with was a statistic. That's not how you spell statistic, is it? Yeah, statistic. Okay, and a statistic, normally we see it as statistics because usually we're using more than one, but a statistic is a fact. A measurement. Or a piece of data. From a large study used to summarize information. So that's kind of a long definition, so make sure you get that written down and then I'll talk about it. So a fact, a measurement, or a piece of data from a large study used to summarize information. So when we say that we use like a data, that was like when we said which one happens the most. Like most people, it took 15 minutes to get to work. That was just a data piece already. Alright. But sometimes we do more calculated ones that take a long time or take actual like functions in our calculator to do. Like deviation and standard deviation. That's a really long formula to do, and it tells us information, and that's not a statistic. We're going to start with our 4 statistics that you probably already know, that we're just going to make sure that we have the same vocabulary for. So we're going to do a foldable here, so take your sheet, and you're going to have it facing up where you can see the time in minutes it took. So have it facing this way, so you can see this box. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take this top edge and you're going to fold it to the top of the box. Yeah, can you fill it fast? So top edge to the top part of the box. You have scissors right there, dude. And then we're going to do the bottom edge to the bottom part of the box so that the whole time you can see that example. So the whole time you should be able to see the example, the time and minutes it took Trevor. Then there's one scissors at every desk. There's only one because we're making 2 small cuts. You're going to make 1 small cut between mean and mode and 1 small cut between range and median. So share that scissors. There's only 1 per table because it shouldn't take you very long to cut. So cut, and then pass it around. So just that slip between the mean and median, and then that slip between, slip between range and median, and then the slip between mean and mode. Don't actually cut through the paper. All right, give your table about 1 more minute to pass those scissors around. It's just 2 quick cuts. Shouldn't take you too long.
And we glue it?
If you want to. I'm going to write on mine first and then glue it at the end. But if you want to glue it, you can. Your choice. If you want to glue yours in right away, you can. You can just glue it on the white side and then flip it. But I'm going to write on mine first because I just like to move mine around. And then also it kind of gets off the edge here and that drives me nuts. So I'm going to write on mine before I glue mine in. But if you want to glue yours in first, it just kind of drives me nuts when it goes over the notebook line and I can't write on it straight. Alright, so let's take a look at our problem first. Okay, well we can glue it in at the end anyways. Alright. Alright, as we take, you can keep that at your desk. As we take a look at our data is about the time in minutes it took Trevor to walk to school for 2 weeks are listed below. So what are some things that we noticed about that data? It takes at least how much time? At least 14 minutes and at most about 21. Good. How many data points do we have? 10. But I thought it was 2 weeks. Isn't 2 weeks 14?
Yeah.
So why is there only 10 if we did 2 weeks? Good, we're just walking to school, and to school it's just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's 5 days per week. So we aren't counting the weekends because we're not walking to school on the weekends. Good. All right, we're going to start with mean. Again, these words are hopefully feeling a little familiar to you. Mean, mode, median, range. All right, mean. Does anyone remember what is the main word we want to associate with mean? Not middle. It starts with an A. Average. So I'm going to write that nice and big there because you might see that, especially when we're talking to people that are not mathematicians. So if you're working somewhere where you aren't like a specific mathematician, you might say on average people need this much medication. Okay, you wouldn't say the mean of the medication is this. If you're writing a paper to get published, you would use the word mean. All right, an average is the calculated center of the data. The calculated center of the data. So as we take a look at that, there's 2 steps that we need to do. And again, this one, hopefully we're feeling like we've done this before, right? Our first step is going to be to add our data points together. Add data points together. And then the second one is going to be to do what? Divide, good. We divide by the number of data points. Okay, oh yeah, focus. Ephra, focus. I know, but it's distracting. You're distracting me, you know? All right, when we say by the number of data points, we're really asking ourselves how many data points there are. So if that helps you to write that, if that just looks crowded and you're like, yeah, I know what it means by number of data points. Really, we're just asking how many are there. All right, so normally to find average or mean, we wouldn't do all of our work. We wouldn't show that at this point. You guys are old enough that I trust that you're putting it into your calculators correctly. But because these are our notes, we're going to take time to show that. So on each of these flaps, on the top part of the flap is our definition or how to do it. And then on the inside here, we're actually going to do it with our data here. So with our data, we're going to start by adding them together. Does anyone remember what's another word for the answer of an adding problem? Sum. So for step 1, we're going to find the sum. I'm going to write that there because you might see that on your test. AKA, I just looked at the test last period and the word sum is on it, so I'm making sure you write it down. Sum just means to add. All right, and we're just going to add our numbers here. So you shouldn't have to look up at the board right now because you have these numbers yourself. So you're just doing 18 plus 15 plus 14. If you're like, where the heck is she getting these numbers? They're all right here.
I'll write them all in order.
Yeah, I'm just writing them in order. Yep, all of them we're adding all. 14 plus 15 plus 17 plus 21 plus 16 plus 20 plus 18 plus 19. After you write them all, you can count and double check that you have the same amount. We said that there was 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, this is the part that you would probably just do in your calculator. This is probably the only time that you're going to actually write this out. I would use Desmos when I work on this because if you get distracted in the middle of your work, you can see where you are. If you mess up and accidentally put in like 118 instead of 18, you don't have to start all over. You just fix that one number. So 18 plus 15 plus 14 plus 15 plus 17 plus 21 plus 16 plus 20 plus 18 plus 19. And we get 173. Now what's nice about that is if we use Desmos for step number 2, when we divide, we're going to take that answer, 173, divided by how many points were there? 10. So what's nice about that is if in Desmos, especially if you're doing this, you can just hit this enter. And then remember we have that A and S button. And what happens in that when I do that is if I screwed something up here, let's say this was supposed to be a 14 instead of a 15 and I have to change it, it automatically changes it here for me. So that's really nice that if that happens.
Where do we get
10? How many? Remember there's 10 points. So we get 17.3. Okay, Orion, Andrew, focus. It's distracting when you talk so much. So 17.3, and what are we measuring our time, or these numbers in? Or our time? Minutes. So if you ask Trevor, how long does it take you to get to school? He might say on average,
you probably wouldn't say 17.3 minutes, but you'd say probably on average a little more than 17 minutes. Well, maybe he just walks slow. Maybe he has a lot of like stop lights to get through.
That's not that far.
Maybe he's like watching TikTok as he walks and he just walks really slow. Yeah, depending on how fast you walk, that's just about a mile or so. A lot of people walk a mile to school. Especially when people who live in the city. Our city is not even that city of a city. That made sense. Alright, so that's our mean. We're going to close up that flap. We're going to do mode next. Who remembers what does mode sound like, or what word do we want to do with mode? Most. Yeah, mode, most. It kind of has that M-O starting point. So mode, most. And it's the number that appears the most often. Now that's something that we all pretty much know, but these couple 2 points here are something that sometimes we forget when we're finding mode. So I put them on there for us to remember. Sometimes there can be no mode. What would that mean if there is no mode? Yeah, every number appears the exact same number of times. So everything is just 1 time, or everything is 2 times, or everything is 3 times. But if everything happens the same exact number of times, there's not one that's most often, then there's no mode. Or sometimes there can be more than one. And that happens when not everything happens the exact same time, but maybe these 2 numbers happen more often, but they happen the same amount of times together. Alright, so to do our mode, what I like to do personally is list my numbers least to greatest. That just helps me kind of group things together. Because when I look at it, sometimes I get a little confused. Especially this one, it's not too bad. There's only 10 numbers. But when there's a long list of numbers, it can help to put it in order least to greatest. So what's my smallest number I have? What? 14. And then we have 2 15s. I'm just going to put dots down in my data here just to show that I got those. That way I know I've done them. 15, 15. 1 16. 17, just 1. 2 18s. And then 19, 20, 21. And again, you might do mode just by looking at it. You might be able to see that. That's something that I have a really tough time with numbers, especially when they get spaced closer together or if they're in smaller font. It's hard for me to kind of see what's happening most. So are there any numbers here that happen more often than others? Yeah, 18 and 15. Which one happens more, 15 or 18? They're the same. So how many modes does this one have? 2. So 15 and 18 would be our mode. So even though they match, they both happen 2 times, they happen more than the other ones. So that makes it, those are still the modes. So if you ask Trevor, how long does it take you to walk to school? He might say, well, most times it's about 15 or 18 minutes. That might be another way he describes how long it takes him to get to school. All right, we have 2 more. We have median and range. We're actually going to jump down to median next. Good. Median means what? Middle. median, middle, and that's the number located in the center of the data. So it's similar to our mean. Our mean is the center, but the mean takes into account like really big numbers or really small numbers and adjusts the center for that. And our median, we're literally looking at which one is the center. Where is the middle of the data? So to do that, step number 1, we're going to list orders and list the numbers in order. And I always go least to greatest. If you wanted to, you could go it the other way. If you want to go biggest to smallest, you could. Doesn't matter, but I don't know. I always was taught least to greatest. And then we move between the low and the high. So as I work my way in this way towards the middle, I'm also going to start at the top and work my way in towards the middle. So those of you that maybe have played piano, that's kind of like chopsticks, where you go like, you guys know what I'm talking about, chopsticks, where I was like, no? Yeah? Some of you? Some of you that don't know piano, that's okay. It's just a thought. It's kind of like that. We're working our way in towards the middle. Now, if there's only one number in the middle, that's great. That's our median. But if there's two numbers in the middle, then we're going to add and divide by 2. We actually find the mean of those two numbers. And that mean just tells us what is the middle of those two middle numbers. So we've already actually done a lot of this work because we did that in our mode to show our work. For this one, if it helps, try and write a little smaller so you can write it in one line across. So I'm going to just copy what we wrote for mode. If somebody wants to read it out loud, so I can just write it, that'd be great. 14, 15, 15, 16, 17, 18, 18, 19, 20, 21. If you can write it all in one line, that's going to help kind of get this idea of finding the middle. If you don't, that's okay. We'll figure it out. You'll be fine. You got that big brain. You can figure it out. We're smart in this class. All right, and then a good way is just to double check. We should have 10 points. So after you write yours down, just double check that you have 10. All right, we're going to work our way in towards the middle. Now, when you do this, some teachers have taught you to just cross them out. Do not get in that habit. Try not to cross them out. Use dots or little X's up top or below, but don't actually cross them out because we're going to need that data again, not in this lesson, but later on when we find the median, we're going to reuse our list. And that's kind of nice because if we put it in order least to greatest and we need to do that again, I don't want to cross things out because I don't want to have to rewrite this. I already wrote it once. So I'm going to start with my low, 14. And it's like we're going to pair it. 14 goes with 21. My low and my high. Then I'm going to go in towards the middle. So next I have 15 and 20. If I have it written down, I like to just use my fingers. So 21, 20, 15, 19, 15, and just work my way in. Some people, they just like to go like low, high, low, but then they get distracted by their friend because they realize somebody's on their phone and they're not supposed to. Get off your phone. All right, and then you go back and you're like, oh shoot, am I going to be on 17 or 18? And if you're not sure, just count. You should have this same amount on both. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This side I only have 3, so I need 4 to even it up. And then if I go one more, it'll be 5 and 5. So how many? So this time I have these two numbers in the middle, 17 and 18. So what I need to do is find the middle of these numbers, and this one we could probably do without a calculator. Most of you know what's in the middle of 17 and 18. 17.5. Okay, but if they're numbers that are really far away from each other and we can't visualize what's in the middle, other numbers are really easy to tell, like 19 and 21. What number is in between 19 and 21? 20. So this one we probably could just say 17.5 and call it good, but if we're not sure, that's where we add the numbers together, divide by 2. So 17 plus 18. (17 plus 18 is 35). And then 35 divided by 2. And we get 17.5, which is what we said was in the middle. Again, though, since these are our notes, it's important for us to just take time to even write down the steps that we know. That way, when we come back and we're confused, we're not like, oh, there's a magic number. Where'd it come from? All right, so if you ask Trevor, how long does it take you to walk out to school, he might say, on average, it takes a little more than 17 minutes. Most of the time, it's about 15 or 18 minutes. Or he might say, well, my median is 17.5 minutes, which sounds silly. In this example, we probably wouldn't use median. We'd say on average, or mostly what we use. Now, those all represent center. They all represent kind of a middle number, either the center, the average, the most, or the middle. Range is a little bit different, and we'll see why in just a second. So I'm going to fold that up. All right, last one is range. Range is how spread out the data is. So it's not measuring like what's the middle of the data or what's one number to describe the data. Range is measuring how spread out the data is. And to do that, we do our maximum minus our minimum. Yeah, I don't know. We got a lot of music going on today. It's insane. People are going to go deaf. What's another word for maximum?
Max.
Max. Or big. The biggest number minus the smallest number. So if that helps you to write that, if you look at maximum and minimum and you don't instantly know what that means, maybe write big and small. If you know what maximum and minimum instantly mean, you probably don't have to write that. Remember, it's your notes. All right, so as we took like a look at words, math. As we take a look at our numbers, what's our maximum? What was the biggest or the longest time it took for him to get to school? 21 minus 14. So 21 is our maximum. Minus our 14 is our minimum. And 21 minus 14 is 7. So if I ask Trevor how long it takes him to get to school walking, would 7 minutes be a good description of how long it takes him to get to school? Why not? Are any of his times even close to 7 minutes? No, our last one is double that amount of time. So at 7 minutes, most of the time when we're talking about this in words or in the real world, when we talk about range, we would just say like, oh, it's in between 21 and 14 minutes. We wouldn't actually use that 7 minutes, or we would say, it's about 17 minutes, but it varies 7 minutes depending on the day. Meaning it could change up to 7 minutes depending on the traffic, maybe depending on if he stops and runs away from a dog. Dog's chasing him, I don't know. All right, if you didn't glue this in yet, how you're going to glue it in is you flip it over to this blank side. I'll get that front table glue.
Is that it?
That's it for notes, yep. So go ahead and get that glued in if you haven't yet. If you did, perfect. And then there is a quick check today. For your quick check, you might want to use a whiteboard for some of the problems. All right, give me 1 second. short on glue apparently on every table. All right, rest of the time is for your quick check.